Welcome back to the Play by Play podcast. This is episode number 64, where today we'll be taking a look at All Star Weekend, what happened during it, and most importantly, our reaction to it. Did we like the brand new All Star format? Did we not like it? What were some of the highlights over the weekend? And overall, should the NBA continue doing this? If you guys are watching this on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe, leave a comment, and like it down below, as well as share it with your friends. And if you have not already, what the heck are you doing? Go ahead and follow us on all social medias, that being TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Like always, you already know where to look. All those ads will be down below. And just for you lazy people out there, there'll be a bar rising right here. And without further ado, guys, the commentary on the All Star Weekend starts right now. So the 2025 All-Star Weekend has now passed us by, and it was new, to say the least. It was definitely something that was new. But I would not particularly say that there was anything new that particularly caught my eye with this weekend. Of course, the huge highlight, which we'll get to more towards the end, was the big time change in the All-Star format, having three All-Star teams set in a tournament along with a winner of the Rising Stars game. But just looking at the weekend as a whole, there wasn't a whole lot of excitement towards it. And in fact, there was a lot more that probably degraded the weekend more than elevated it. You start off with the Rising Stars game. That for me has become kind of the highlight of it. I really, really enjoyed having four new teams in this now, especially including in the G League team, because it kind of gives some players that you would never really even think about a chance to shine and go out and play. And I think that it was also really cool to go ahead and see those rookies, that rookie class really shine, especially when we're talking about this year with this rookie class that we did not believe was going to be great. Some players have definitely exceeded a lot of our expectations, such as Dalton Knecht, Stephon Castle, who were the highlight of those teams. But even just looking at the regular season in the past, you got guys like Zachary Reese-Shea that we didn't think was going to be a good number one overall pick. He has definitely exceeded his ceiling and exceeded expectations. But it was cool to see that. And that's something that I really do hope will continue, because not only do you highlight new and different players, we also get some, interesting pieces like Jeremy Lin coaching the G League team. That was really fun to see, and to see him back in the NBA community for sure. Then you move on to really Saturday and the competitions with Saturday, which I'll be completely honest, I did not watch. For majority of it, for I believe the 3-point contest and the slam dunk contest, I was actually gone. I was not home at the time. I was going out to record the New Mexico State versus Florida International game, so I did not get to watch it. But I did get to rewatch a lot of it, and it was kind of how it is every single year. We'll start off with the skills challenge, which I think is something that people have become more and more against as the years have flown by. I think that the thing with things such as the skill challenge and All-Star Weekend as a whole is that it all just seems so repetitive. Even though it happens once per year, we make such a big deal out of it, and we kind of just don't get anything different. We're getting to a point now where everything has kind of been done. Records have been set. When it pertains to the dunk contest, there have been pretty much all dunks that have been done. And we're just craving for something new and exciting to happen. And at this point, there really isn't anything. And the Wembanyama Chris Paul controversy definitely did not help at all. I mean, in fact, it completely degraded that challenge and just made it seem kind of useless. If you guys haven't seen the clip, virtually CP3 and Wembanyama pretty much found a loophole through the skills challenge, where when it gets to the shooting part, I believe there's a rule that says that once you shoot that particular shot 3 times, whether you miss or make, you can go ahead and move on to the next challenge. But the balls just have to be in use. So seeing that, when you look through at what they did, Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama pretty much just throw the balls into the crowd and then run on to the next challenge, because that's quicker. It's quicker than taking all of those shots, taking the time to shoot all those shots and wait for a make. They just threw all of them out, and they were able to complete the challenge in no time. I mean, they pretty much got through, and it was nice to see the NBA kind of take action and disqualify that, and to kind of be like, all right, guys, like, let's not get too far, out of balance here with this, and let's not make that unenjoyable for the fans. But it was kind of another example of the fact that the players really don't take this seriously. The players honestly couldn't care less about what's going on. Sure, they want to win, they want to go out, they want to be in competition, and I'm sure that Wemby and Chris Paul did that also because it's quicker and they wanted to get a better time, but it was lazy. It was just there was just so much distaste and uninterest there that it made me not want to watch it whatsoever ever again. And even if they make rule changes, I'm sure that there will be plenty of players that will look at that, think that they can find a loophole through it and try to change the rules, right? Like I really don't see how you can really change things. Sure, you can change the verbiage of some of your rules, but how are you really going to X out the ability to loophole over whatever rule you realistically put on it? So that was really tough to see. I believe the Cavs team ended up winning that with Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley. There's a lot of different interesting participants in that contest, to be honest. You had, like I said, the Cavs, you had the Warriors, but of course, some of the big names not in there. So what we got was Draymond Green and Moses Moody. Did like to see Wemby pretty much being in getting a lot of participation throughout the weekend. So he had that with Chris Paul, and then they threw in a rookie team there with Zachary Reese-Shea and Alex Sarr. But again, it was repetitive. It was bland. There was the controversy, which just kind of threw a bad taste into your mouth. And it's just not – it's something that continues to top the list of something that we do not want to see again. And honestly, if they took the skill challenge out of the weekend, I really don't see anybody really being sad about it. Then you move on to the three-point contest, which was another one that I did not get to watch, but this is kind of always the highlight of the weekend, in my opinion. It's always something that gets the fans out of their seats, and I think it's something that, unlike the skills challenge, you can't realistically cheat, right? You kind of just have to go up and just shoot the basketball, and because of that, it's nice because players can't really, in certain ways, not give a crap about the contest, to really put it simply. They just have to go out there and try to make as much shots as they can. It's fun, it's interesting, and even though it's been repeated year after year, the NBA has put brand new faces into it. They've done, different challenges with having Steph Curry versus Sabrina Ionescu last year. I would love to see Steph Curry versus Caitlin Clark if we could get that to happen before Steph Curry unfortunately retires. But they found different ways to make it interesting, and that's really what we want. We want some refreshes, right? We want something that finally is historic, that we've never seen before. We want to see matchups that we only dream about, like Steph Curry versus Caitlin Clark. Sure, do we think that Steph Curry is going to win that? Of course. But Sabrina Ionescu was very competitive with Steph, despite her shooting from the same line that he did. Let's go ahead and see what Caitlin Clark can do. We saw Caitlin Clark in Iowa shooting from half court, shooting from behind the half court line and making crazy threes. Let's go ahead and match up those two together. And so the three-point contest is always something that I think is really bound to stay. This year, it was fun because Heat star Tyler Hero was able to come in. And I believe that they also added in some long distance three-point shots, which was actually really interesting as well. And he banged both of them to go ahead and win in that final round with a score of 24 points to edge out Buddy Hield, who is another great shooter. And that's what's also interesting about the three-point contest as well is, again, you get to see these different names, but you also get to see a lot of role players, a lot of 3-and-D guys, some of these guys that aren't going to be getting a lot of shine because they're not realistically all-stars. They're past their time with the Rising Stars game. Maybe they're not great dunkers. And so it gives, some people such as Buddy Hield, some people such as Tyler Hero, some of that shine, on All-Star weekend. But you also had, a couple of other, big time, participants. Darius Garland, who's an All-Star this year. You had Jalen Brunson, top star for the Knicks. Damian Lillard was in it. Also, another point with Damian Lillard, it was fun how they did that little $100,000 little contest between him and the fans with Mr. Beast. It was definitely a warming moment to go ahead and see that fan at the last second pull off a buzzer beater, hit that three, and earn himself the money and be crowded and carried along. That was really, really cool to see. But the three-point contest is definitely something that continues to be entertaining. And I think that no matter what, fans will continue to see because it's something that kind of relates to people, especially on a more personal note. I feel like when you're little and you're a kid, you kind of start to do these three-point contests and try to make out who is the better shooter. And then we move on to the dunk contest, which I think got a little bit of mixed reviews, but overall, I enjoyed it. I can't lie. I didn't think that it was a bad dunk contest whatsoever, especially the final two. Stephon Castle brought the heat this year. I mean, as a rookie being in his first time, he honestly has bigger hops than I really, really knew him to have. Like he really, really surprised me with his ability to get up and get his face close to the rim. Him and Mac McClung, who always brings it every single year. He is so entertaining, is very, very creative, and brings out different things every single year. So those top two were really, really entertaining. Yes, it was not 2020. Yes, it wasn't 1996. Yes, it wasn't, I believe, 2008 when Dwight Howard had the Superman, and we could go back in time to, the late 90s, early 2000s with Vince Carter and the Tracy McGrady's and yada, yada, yada. In the 80s and 90s with MJ and Dominique Wilkins battling. Sure, maybe it wasn't on that level, but it has beaten out a lot of, especially a lot of the recent dunk contests that we've seen. In my opinion, this was likely, I would say, the second best performance out of Mac McClung behind the first one, because I think that the first one is always going to be very nostalgic, just because I think that a lot of people didn't really knew who he was at the time and didn't really expect to come from. But, the Kia car dunk over that, he had the double dunk with the two balls going through. He hits the front of the rim on one of them. Stephon Castle had a couple of beautiful, turnaround windmills. He had a left-handed dunk where he did a full 360. I mean, it was a really, really entertaining final round out of two guys that, again, aren't the top biggest stars. And hopefully, from what we've seen out of this dunk contest is going to potentially start to what is the word? Attract the top NBA stars to potentially come in. John Morant was making some comments on Twitter. Zach LaVine replied to him and said, I may have to give it another shot and come back for another potential shot at the championship. Would love to see Zach LaVine back in there. Would love to see Aaron Gordon, even though he's talked about not wanting to do it again after being robbed out of 2 titles. And I understand that he's a lot older. But I think, moreover, just with this dunk contest, not even in terms of creativity, I think that they just need to start finding some better dunkers. I mean, Castle was great, McClung was great, but Matas Buzelis to me doesn't really strike me as like a top dunker. And when you looked at some of the dunks that he had, it was kind of clear to me pretty much, I would say because of his size mostly, that he was having some issue, just getting high on a lot of his dunks. Like he wasn't able to get, a lot of airtime on his dunks. And that made, some dunks to not really look that exciting because he wasn't able to stay high and get a lot of power on his dunks and forceful and get some, a reaction from the crowd. And his first dunk, which he wasn't able to complete, he just simply could not get high enough, couldn't get enough hang time to really follow through with what he wanted to do. I believe he was trying a backwards between the leg bounce up into his hand and dunking. It would have looked amazing, but he just couldn't get very high on it. And Andre Jackson, he's not a bad dunker whatsoever, but his creativity wasn't really there. And again, just because he was bigger, it just didn't seem like he had a lot of the hang time that guys such as Castle and McClung did. So it'd be interesting to, see some of the better dunkers in the league go at it, especially having Mac McClung. And Mac McClung, I have to be honest, right now is looking like one of, if not the greatest dunkers of all time. Obviously I'd put him up there with almost anyone. Zach LaVine, Nate Robinson, Aaron Gordon, even though he didn't win any slam dunk contests, I think that he was great. Jordan, I mean, his creativity, his variety. Jason Richardson, even Andre Iguodala. I could keep going on and on. Vince Carter, who they said that he was challenging. I could go on and on and on. I think that Mac McClung ranks up there with all of them. His creativity, the difference in each and every single one of his dunks, his ability to just get so high, especially for his shots. I mean, there were so many dunks that he had last night where his chin is virtually above the rim and he's able to hang there for 2 or 3 seconds. He's very patient when following through with his dunks. He just looks calm, cool, and collected out there, which was fun. And that is why also it would be interesting to see him versus Zach LaVine go at it. That would be a lot of fun. John Morant made that tweet. Would love to see him in it. If Zion Williamson is healthy, would love to see him. Who else could we put in? Anthony Edwards. Like, for me, the dunk contest doesn't really have a lot of risk to it, right? There's not really many ways that you could get injured or anything. So why don't we see the big names go out there? Like Giannis is an absolute freaking beast. Like I would love to see Giannis out there, trying big long windmills with his almost 8-foot wingspan, or just stuff like that, just stuff we haven't seen. But it is no question that Mac McClung has definitely revived this a little bit. I believe that the NBA reported they got 1 billion total views during that time span with the dunk contest. So it is clear that Mac McClung has definitely attracted eyes. The question is if big new stars don't come into this, like let's say we don't get a Zach LaVine, how long can Mac McClung and potentially even now Stephon Castle really carry this? Like, at what point does it really get repetitive for NBA fans, right? At what point are we going to say, oh, well, it's a dunk contest. McClung's going to do it again. Sure, he's going to have some great dunks and we're going to love watching it, but there's really no competition. We're kind of just watching him to go there. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I would still be entertained by seeing 4 or 5 dunks out of Mac McClung. I think Kenny said it jokingly during the broadcast that he would, we should just change it to having the Mac McClung show where you have 5 dunks of him dunking. Definitely would be entertaining, but you also do want to see that depth of competition. You want to see 2, 3, 4 of the best dunkers in the league going at it, giving us different varieties of dunks and whatnot. So at what point does that become a little bit repetitive? I definitely think the Stephon Castle did help that field this year because he did give McClung a little bit of a run for his money, a little bit of competition, but McClung pulls in with his third. With him being the humble guy that he is and really being at the bottom when it comes to league talent, he's definitely going to continue to do these as long as he can. So it's going to be interesting what kind of matchups we can have going forward and how the NBA is going to be able to continue keeping this little bit of a trend going. Because there's no doubt that the dunk contest is at a little bit of a high point right now. It is definitely skyrocketing a little bit when it comes to interest. And by the way, if I wanted to rank Mac McClung's performances, I would definitely say that the first one all the way back in 2021, I believe, or 2022 was definitely the best one. I think that's the most nostalgic. I think that the second one, that this third performance just the other night comes right behind it in second. I think that it's very, very close. I might even say that the dunks are better. They're just not as nostalgic because nobody really knew who Mac McClung was in that first year that he did it. And then, of course, I think that his second performance back in 2024 was definitely his weakest. But very, very excited to see what this kid has. And now we get to the entire point of this video, the moment that you guys have all been waiting for, the 4-team format, the new all-star format that we're probably going to have going forward. There were some people wondering if this was going to be a one-year thing. I do not see personally Adam Silver introducing an idea and then abandoning it after the first year. I think at a minimum, we'll probably have this format for at least 3 or 4 years before it changes again. But what did I think about it? It was hard to watch at times. I'll be honest. It wasn't really enjoyable. And my biggest problem with it as a whole was it wasn't very organic. It wasn't natural. It felt really, really scripted, to be honest. Starting right off the bat from the draft, you could tell that Shaq, Kenny, and Chuck, they didn't have any plans to draft off of team fit or best available player. They drafted based on categories. I mean, that's why each of their teams were able to be named so distinctively. You had Shaq's OGs, which were basically all of the old timers, LeBron, Curry, KD. I could go on and on. It was basically the Olympic team as well. It pretty much had all of the players on the Olympic team. You had Kenny's youngsters, which were all the young guys. Jalen Williams, I believe, was on that team. You had Zach Edey was not on that team. He was on the Rising Stars team. But you had all the young guys in that. Victor Wembanyama, I believe, was on that. Or was he on the Global Stars? I'm not 100% sure. I couldn't even tell you. And then Charles Barkley finally had all the Global Stars, right? He had all of the European, people like Nikola Jokic. He had Giannis, yada, yada, yada. But from that, it just it wasn't fun whatsoever because they didn't really draft and build teams. They were just building based on categories. And then when you actually put them into a bracket, it was pretty clear early on that the NBA was going to try their hardest to have Chuck's Global Stars against Shaq's OGs. Like, they wanted the Olympic team, the US team, going against the globe, the world, or rather they maybe even wanted Shaq versus Chuck because of that rivalry, and they wanted to continue that story. Like, it was pretty clear from the beginning that was going to be the matchup in the final. And I don't like that. It doesn't make it enjoyable. It doesn't make me think, is there a chance of a different team winning? If they wanted to do globe versus US, world versus US, which, by the way, has been something that everyone has been asking for. So many people have been wondering, because the talent has become so built up in the world view, could that world team stack up against pretty much the U.S. Olympic team and go up against the top players in the U.S.? We've been wanting that. They could have just given us that and it would have been perfectly fine. I mean, majority of the European players are at the top of the league right now anyways. That majority of them would have been all-stars. Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic, Luka Doncic, Giannis Antetokounmpo. That's four guys right there that you could slide in. And they took the wrong route with it, and they took it to a point where it was very predictable and it was just forced. It was scripted. It didn't feel great. And on the note of just the games themselves, I really didn't enjoy having the Rising Stars team in that little group. It was a little bit of a fun storyline. It was fun for a second to think, what if these, U19 guys go ahead and pull off the upset of the century, and upset the party. But it was pretty obvious that it wasn't going to happen. Not only did the NBA probably not want that to happen, but the talent gap was so large. Draymond Green said it best on their broadcast that it's the U.S. Olympic team versus a U19 team. Like, think about that. And while they did their best to drag it out, keep things really competitive, it just felt at the end that Shaq's team is going to win no matter what. And that's what we got. There were so many moments that Rising Stars team could have gone ahead and pulled ahead in that game and won it. But they started messing around. They started jacking up threes. They started, missing funny layups and yada, 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 because the Shaq's OGs could not score to end the game. And so they gave it up, and then they were able. And it just was not fun at all. It wasn't entertaining. Everything about it was just so off. I would much more like it if they subbed out that Rising Stars team for a fourth All-Star team. Get Ernie into that picture and have him drafting. You could shorten the teams and make up one more team with that. It didn't seem like anybody was really overly, exhausted or was really gassed from the time. 40 points was actually, I think, really low of a score because these guys are so talented. So they're going out, they're making all these 3-pointers, and they caught up to 40, pretty quickly. So I think that you could easily have a fourth team and relegate these teams to, 5, 6, maybe even 7 players, or you could add in other all-stars. I don't think that us as fans would really care about that. Adding a couple all-stars, give other people praise, people that we don't really get to see. That would be fun as well. So I would raise the points on it. I would go probably to 50 because especially towards the end of the game, I think that the NBA kind of realized that they messed up because, like I said, they got to that limit so quickly that they kind of didn't fill out a lot of their time. And so you kind of saw players starting to, hold the ball for a little bit longer, missing a lot more shots, missing some layups, just so that they could kind of drag the game out a little bit because they got there quickly. So I definitely think that, add a fourth All-Star team, increase that point margin up to 50, potentially even 60 points if you can. Another thing, I think that coaches should be on the floor coaching their teams. I don't understand why Shaq and Chuck were in the championship and they were up in the commentary booth with Kevin Hart and Ernie, and we're just chilling. Like, this is their team. Like, they're not owners. They're not general managers. They are head coaches. They drafted this team. Like, have them down there. Have some different interactions with the players. Have them in huddles. Even if you just give them a whiteboard and they're just scribbling crazy things, like, have those types of things. Like, that is something that makes the experience a lot better. The NBA is a community. It's a family at the end of the day. And to see those different reactions between players, whether they like each other, whether they don't like each other, whether they're from an older era, from the modern era, having those interactions would just make things so much more entertaining. It would make things seem more fluid. It really seemed with those guys not on the court that it was virtually just a pickup game. Like, we just picked teams and now we're going to go up and down the floor and play. So I did not like that aspect either. And probably the final thing, and me personally as a production guy with being in as a journalism major in the news and being an analyst and a guy that is looking at play-by-play and commentary, I hated the broadcast booth, or at least the plan that they had for it. I thought it was terrible. There were some moments where they would have like the normal NBA commentators on. I didn't even know who they were. They didn't even mention their names throughout the whole broadcast. But then there were some moments where they would switch to the TNT booth where you had the two coaches that were there. You had Kevin Hart and you had Ernie. But the problem with that is they weren't commentating. Like, there were so many moments throughout that tournament where you were sitting there watching the broadcast and there was just silence. Like, you just heard what was happening on the floor because I don't know if they were having mic issues, if they were just not talking, if they were talking to each other and not to the audience, but when they switched over to the TNT booth with those five, they weren't talking at all. And so you were wondering what the heck was going on. It made your mind even more bored. Like there just wasn't any fluidity. It just felt forced. It didn't feel natural. It didn't feel cleaned up whatsoever. Like there are so many different things that they could do differently. There are so many things that they could do differently and change with this format. And there are so many different formats that I think that they could go to that would make things a lot more entertaining. And despite them decreasing, the needed points, despite them, splitting these guys up in teams, it was pretty clear once again that the players did not want to be there, that the players were just trying to get through it. They were just trying to have fun, and there was no competition whatsoever. I do want to give a quick shout out to guys such as Victor Wembanyama and Jaren Jackson Jr., because those were the two guys, at least from what I could see, that were pretty much legitimately actually trying throughout it. Wemby was really, really hurt when him and the Global Stars lost in that first round. He was really trying. Jaren Jackson Jr. mentioned in the podcast recently that he was going to press full court, and he pretty much did that, the whole time that he was playing. So big kudos to those guys, because that made it at least a little bit watchable at times. But there was still goofing around. There was no real defense. There was a lot of missed shots, especially consecutively, which is just kind of zoned you out of the whole thing. It could have been so much better. And to be honest, with how much disinterest the players have, I don't know if there's a format that you can really change to have it. Because let's be honest, we're not trying to make excuses for these guys, and I'm definitely, want them to see them play harder. But this is really the only significant break that these guys get throughout the entire season. This is the only break that they get. They are millionaires. They don't want to go out and risk their bodies and play hard and potentially injure themselves, like we saw with Paul George in the early 2010s when I believe they were doing an Olympic preseason game. Like, they don't want to have that happen to them. So of course they're not going to take it very seriously. Of course they're not really going to care about fan enjoyment. And us as fans, and I mentioned this on my TikTok last night, once again, go ahead and follow that. But us as fans, we need to start looking and blaming it ourselves as well, because we are encouraging this. The more that we continue to watch these weekends and continue to watch these contests, the more that the NBA is just going to go through with it. Like we need to get to the point where we just stop watching this, because that is going to be a true protest, and it's going to show the NBA that something truly needs to change. But like having 1 billion views on the slam dunk contest, like that is not going to change things. They're going to continue to give us the same challenges with the same players, with the same format every single year. Not until we stop watching is the NBA truly going to pay attention. So while the players need some accountability, us as fans need some accountability as well. So I think we got left with pretty much the same question as we were talking about throughout the entire year, which is, what do you do with this? What do you truly do going forward with this All-Star weekend, with this lot, to make it entertaining for the fans? What do you do to get these players to make things more competitive? It's clear that the format still needs changing. There were reports coming out today that Adam Silver is potentially considering a 1v1 tournament being included into the All-Star weekend, which, to be honest, sounds a lot of fun. But once again, are the players going to be competitive with each other? Are they going to be going at it? But most of all, how is the NBA going to treat this, and how would they run that? Can they get, the top stars included into a 1v1 contest? Are you going to have KD and LeBron and Steph and Giannis and Jokic all backing out of it because they don't want to participate in that? Or are you going to kind of make it mandatory and a requirement for them? Can you give us some of the dream matches that we want? I think that there's so many different ways that they could do it. I think that you could match it up just purely based on, position and, height and weight in the first round. And then you have some unproportional matchups through. Like what I'm trying to say is, we want unique matchups as NBA fans, right? Like we would love to see Donovan Mitchell going up against Anthony Davis in a 1v1 competition. We would love to see Nikola Jokic against Luka Doncic in a 1v1 competition. We would love to see LeBron James against, who knows, De'Aaron Fox in a 1v1 competition. You know what I'm saying? Like, we just want different matchups, dream matchups that we talk about on the playground, in the lunchroom, in the break room all the time. We want those to happen. So I think potentially doing it maybe by position and height in that first round, and then have unproportional matchups in the second. That could be fun. I was thinking about today, you could potentially do it where you seed the 1v1 guys by popularity, because we know that uh, the All-Star voting is by popularity pretty much. So you have your 1 seed, your 16 seed, all the way through. So maybe you'll have LeBron, as the 1 seed, and he's going up against the 16 seed, which would be De'Aaron Fox, for example. And then you go through there. If they want to add that in, which I think would be entertaining, it's something that we as fans have also been asking for. I think that they need to find a way to give us those type of dream matches. Like, I would love to see Kevin Durant versus Kawhi Leonard in a 1v1 contest. That would be so entertaining. But that either needs to be, so good that you can use it as an event yourself, or it needs to be so good that you can plug it in for the All-Star game itself as well. But if that's not going to be replacing the All-Star game, there are still plenty of other things that you could do. I just mentioned how you could potentially fix the format. 4 teams, go to 50 points, have those draft guys actually coach their teams, yada, yada, yada. If not, just change it back to the traditional format, to be honest. I would not mind East versus West once again. That, to me as a fan, that is what I last remember as an entertaining All-Star year. Like, I remember 2016, LeBron and Kobe going at it, and Kobe's final year. Like, I remember those types of moments. There was stuff that were so fun. Sure, players didn't take it too seriously. It wasn't that competitive. There were such high-scoring games. But at least there was a format. At least it wasn't forced. It was the top stars in the East versus the top stars in the West. Who was going to come out on top? That was also a great story. Another idea, if you want to do global versus US, if you want to do world versus US, do that. Just make it the same format as East versus West, but make it global versus US. Like I said, there is so much international talent nowadays that you could make an international team. And you, of course, can make a US team. And it would just make things such more cleaner. It would give the fans an idea of what they actually want to do instead of having to guess and really predict what is going on. Like, give us that. That would be super duper fun. Other ideas that I have floated around, potentially getting rid of the All-Star weekend altogether, taking the Emirates Cup or the Emirates tournament that we have, early on in the season, and plugging that in there. Maybe you could shorten that up to a 3-day window where you have, instead of having, the full 30 teams playing, maybe you take the top 4 seeds from each conference and you put them in a single elimination tournament bracket, right? That would be interesting. You get to see the top stars in the league, the top teams in the league going ahead and going at it. Unfortunately, that would X out some of the top stars. Like, if the Lakers are an 8 seed, if the Suns are a 7 seed, then we don't get to see Kevin Durant and LeBron James in that. So I do think that is something that they would have to work to, but just doing it to have an 8-team bracket where they just get to single elimination play each other, and we still get that championship, and the players and the teams still get that reward, that would be cool as well. Maybe you could potentially pin some of the top NBA teams against some of the top international teams. I know that we see that a little bit through the preseason to warm the players up, but maybe we have, the Shanghai Sharks going up against, the Los Angeles Lakers. Maybe we have the New Zealand Breakers going up against the Boston Celtics. Maybe we have some of these Vietnamese and Taiwanese teams that have guys such as, DeMarcus Cousins or Dwight Howard coming back and playing those teams. And so we get to see those guys back in the NBA community as well. There are so many different ideas that the NBA could use, so many that are better than what they are using right now. And I think that it would be a lot better. I understand that you cannot control the players, what they do, how competitive they really want to treat this. But at the end of the day, they need to be able to format this right. They need to be able to make this believable to the fans that this is actually something that they want to tune into. And there are so many different ways that they could do that. But at the end of the day, that is all from me today. Let me know what you guys think about this. How do you think that the NBA could really change this format and make things exciting? What would you rate the NBA All-Star Weekend on a scale of 1 to 10? Did you love it? Did you hate it? I definitely don't think that it was like all-time terrible, but it was still a pretty bad All-Star Weekend. If your biggest highlight is really the dunk contest and maybe the three-point contest, then you're kind of doing something bad. And there was a lot of controversy to it, which I didn't like. So what would you guys rank it? How do you think that you can change the format? Do you want to see All-Star Weekend to begin with? Do you think that we could just completely do away with it and exit out? I guess it is out of our control. We can only continue to make these videos and speak out against the NBA commissioner and commissioners group and see if they can finally hear us and make changes. So without further ado, guys, that is all from me. If you guys are watching this on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe, leave a like, and comment down below, and share with your friends. And if you haven't already, what the heck are you doing? Go ahead and follow us on all social medias, that being TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. Like always, you already know where they're at. All the ads are down below. And for you lazy people out there, there's going to be a bar coming up right here. Go ahead and follow all those when you get the chance. Without further ado, guys, I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.